Here's to whiskey kisses, the peaty taste of sin.
Greetings, whiskey folk, and welcome back to Drinking Out Loud. My name is Adam Bradshaw, and today we have a very special guest, all the way from Edinburgh, Scotland. Currently, I assume you're in Edinburgh right now. You might be gallivanting. I'm not sure. Gerry Friel from North British. Welcome to the show, Gerry.
Hi, Adam. Thank you very much. Yes, I am in Edinburgh. It's very dark, very cold, and this is my last call of the day. So yes, we're heading home soon.
Beauty. It's a great time of year to be in Edinburgh, in my experience. When I lived there, I loved this time of year. Everything's starting to settle down again. You know, the festival's a bit of a distant memory by this point. Christmas and Hogmanay's around the corner. But one of the folk musicians at the pub I used to work at, Martin Boland, who sadly passed away a couple of years ago, he had a song called November Town, where he described Edinburgh as a place of permanent November.
It's a very good description, actually. The sun was absolutely shining today. It was a nice nippy 4 degrees, and now it's getting even chillier now. So looking forward to the drive home. But lovely place to be at this time of year.
Yeah, colder there than it was here in Canada.
Not for long.
Beauty. So, North British is the topic of today's conversation, and it is a distillery that I have a certain soft spot for. As I've mentioned on this channel before, I lived down the road from it when I was at university. I could actually see it from my bedroom window, which was always a delight to wake up to. And it's a distillery that I've kind of... I discovered through the Scotch Malt Whisky Society. I believe that was the first one I had. It's certainly the first one that I thoroughly remember having. And it's worth mentioning that Scotch Malt Whisky Society, when they chose to bottle a grain for the very first time, it was North British. It was G1, the first grain whiskey that they ever bottled was a North British. And the one that I had was G1.10. It was a 21-year-old from 1990 that was called Sweetness Somersaults Around the Mouth. And I distinctly remember thinking, this is a different side of whiskey. There was flavors in there that I'm not used to finding. And it was a beautiful thing. It kind of... And in a way that very much makes sense when you actually think about it, it tied together what makes single malts and blended Scotch different. It kind of twigged and made sense. You know, it was a missing puzzle piece. And some of the flavor notes that I was looking up the old notes from the SNWS, some of the things that they found in there that I'm not sure if I found at the time, but I think are quite wonderful, are things like sugar puffs, Dr. Pepper, Murray mints, you know, things that you're not normally finding. And I think that's quite wonderful. And as I've gone along, I've made a note to basically pick up any North British I come across for the store, because I love showcasing it to people who don't know about single grain whiskey and don't know how good it can be. So yeah, that's set the tone for what we're talking about today. But before we get too far into talking about the whiskey and the distillery and whatever wonderful tangents we're going to get, I would love to know more about you, Gerry. What's your background? What's your role within North British right now?
Sure. Well, I'm just the newly created role of Business Development Director. Just literally 3 months old pretty much today, in terms of the new role that was created as part of our business restructure. Previous to that, I worked 6.5 years with the business, 18 months running the actual distillery here in Edinburgh, and 5 years running the maturation site down in Edinburgh. We're only two sites in the business, roughly 220 people. And we produce about 45 million litres of grain spirit every year for several customers, the majority of which go to Diageo and Edrington at the moment. But certainly we deal with about another 8 or 9 other smaller customers as well, including Signatory, who's the current release that you're showcasing today. But yeah, so my background's varied. 10 years in manufacturing, about 15-20 years in distribution for various retail firms as well. So originally a Paisley of Technology graduate. It's now University of Western Scotland, and that was in industrial chemistry, but more on the fuels and energy side rather than the pure chemistry side is where I ended up. But I've done my master's here, my MBA at Napier University way back in the day as well. So nice. Get you longer in the tooth now, Adam.
Not at all. You're just getting started. And actually, just getting started is kind of how I feel about grain whiskey in general. And I was thinking about this on the bus to work this morning. Like, if you think about the history of single malt, some of these distilleries that have been around, like, I mean, it's hard to pinpoint an exact date for some of them, but look at Glenturret that, originally claimed 1775, and now they're finding paperwork that was like, in the 1730s or something.
Sure.
Think they didn't start producing a bottled product of single malt until like the 1980s. So that took about 200 years. Now, if you think that like, that's a long time to wait. And single grain, like, when was North British founded? It's
1885 was when we first churned the kind of distillery here. 140 years is actually, in fact, it was just a couple of weeks ago. We done a short video online with our new managing director, Gavin Brogan, who just announced the 140-year-old status of the site.
Nice.
Yeah, so we've been here 140 years, producing grain whiskey.
So if you manage to get an official bottling single malt in the next 60 years, you've beaten single grain in the next 60 years, you've beaten all the malt distilleries to it. You can officially say you're quicker.
True. There are rumours, Adam, that there's a couple of casks in here that actually hold our billionth litre and our 2 billionth litre.
Oh, wow.
So might look out some of them to maybe do a special bottling. You never know.
And it's always interesting to me the vast difference in scale of distilleries in Scotland. And we've got guys like you, and compare you guys' output, for example, to one of the, like, Edrington, Edredour. Like the vast difference in size in what amounts to, not an incredibly similar product, but it's the same thing at the end of the day, Scotch whiskey. It just speaks to the breadth of different ways of making this amber nectar, as it were.
Yeah, I always have a chat with the malt guys and have a laugh about it because they're the very romantic side. The rolling hills, the water. You come to our place with an actual chemical plant here, guys.
Yeah.
There's
actual hard hats being worn.
Yeah, the red overalls, hard hats, the glasses, ear protection, all the PPE required for producing 94.7% pure alcohol.
Though, I think the romanticizing thing of it, I think that could still be done with you guys. Like, I think, like, this whole sort of industrial steampunk revolution thing. That's I think we could romanticize that. That'd be...
Well, I'm always looking for a marketing pointer, so I never might take you up on that, Adam. Might take you up.
Well, maybe you should get the guys in the warehouse to, like, dance like what was it, Kraftwerk? The guys that used to do the
possibly.
Ah, brilliant.
Good stuff.
So when North British was first founded, if I remember correctly, the whole idea behind it was that the grain distilleries that were available to blenders at the time were kind of... they were owned by quite large companies and were a little bit hard to access for some of the smaller distilleries. Is that about right? And that's why North British kind of came along. That's
very much true. Back in the day, there was obviously a lot of competition, but certainly the smaller guys felt a bit squeezed out. And there was 3 individuals really. Now I'm testing my memory here. But there was Mr. Usher, Mr. Sanderson, and Mr. Krabby. 3 well-known names in Edinburgh. The Usher Hall, obviously. And these guys got together with 3 other colleagues, and they formed the North British Cooperative, as it was then. And in our boardroom, we do have pictures of going all the way back to when these guys actually founded the company. You can actually have their pictures all around, and as a tradition, it's kind of continued. So anybody that's on the board now gets a picture taken, it's up in the boardroom, and it goes all the way. So 140 years of whiskey history is there, and there's giants of the industry there. For example, Ethel Robertson from the Robertson Trust, who founded Edrington. She was on the board here as well. And there's a few other well-known faces in the whiskey whiskey industry that's been here for a while. So yeah, it was an actual cooperative, and up until about 1993, when just as Diageo and Edison bought the joint venture in that sense. But we're probably now moving more towards our roots now again, with the recent changes in the industry and recent changes in the marketplace and brand sales. We're now finding ourselves that probably that model is certainly something we want to try and move back to. So watch the space for maybe some more customers coming on board.
Yeah, it's interesting. As soon as you said Krabby, I was in the back of my head, I was like, I wonder if that's the same family, the Leith Krabbies that started the ginger beer and everything.
That's the ginger wine as well. That's exactly the same one.
Brilliant.
Yep.
Incredible. So yeah, talking about that sort of working with the smaller guys and that cooperative sense of things. Obviously, you guys are in Famous Grouse, quite famously. Do you have a sense? Do you have an idea of like how many of the smaller, more like boutique-y blends, not literally boutique-y, not that boutique whiskey company, but the smaller blending houses, like do you know where your grain whiskey ends up? Not always, or are you sometimes surprised when you find out, hey, it's in this one, I didn't realize we sold to them?
No, we tend to sell direct to obviously customers that take the new make. But once they've taken the whiskey as new make, they then cask it up. They may store with us. They may want to store in their own warehouses, etc. But pretty much we try and do a one-stop shop. So you fill with us, you cask with us, you store in a warehouse, and that's that sense. But we deal with customers who are kind of smallest customer, for example, only takes 50,000 litres. Whereas our largest customers takes 31 million.
Yeah,
So they've
wow,
got
that's a
that
big difference.
that range in there. But we
Yeah.
very much try to look after those guys that are very keen to maybe get into the business and take some small stock, small volume in terms of taking it into their their own kind of facilities, etc. And we're comfortable, absolutely comfortable with that. We've got cask holding approximately just under 1 million casks at the moment for various customers across. And those that are familiar with Scotland, it's just along the road in the A71, on the road between Shotts and Edinburgh. It's the kind of back road, as they call it. And literally, if you blink and you'll miss it, but there's a complex of nearly 16 warehouses out there. We've got a couple of contract warehouses as well that we've got extra stock in, and we do some commercial local deals as well with in terms of storage as well. So yeah, we've got the stock all pretty much here or close by to the site here. It's tankered over, filled over there, cast up to the strength required by the customer, and also the cask that they want. We don't select the cask, we don't provide the casks. Customers decide what cask it goes into, and for this particular release that you're talking about, that would have been the team's choice, signatory to choose that particular cask and say, right, okay, we want to fill into this cask and store in that,
Cool.
that cask.
Nice. Yeah, it's a lot of what you're saying there sounds very familiar to. I don't know if you ever deal with Richard Urquhart at Gordon and MacPhail. He talks a lot about their cask selection process and how they take the actual wood to the distilleries to fill. And
yeah, that's very much. We leave that to our customers to do that. Very much as that's done, it's because it's very personal to them in terms of how they want to provide their products, etc. We'll take good care of it for as long as they want. Obviously 3 years is the minimum, and then up to we've recently done a disgorging for a customer who had casks, about 300 or so casks of 1979 product. So it just depends on what they're looking for, how they wanted to do things, and certainly we will support that in any way we can.
Beautiful. Well, I mean, it's 5 o'clock somewhere, as evident of that fact that it's over 5 o'clock there. It may only be 9:23 in the morning for me, but I'm going to dip in and have some 30-year-old right now.
You do that. This is. I'll look at you very jealously.
Brilliant. So this is that boutique whiskey company, North British, that we had a little while ago. That I was a big fan of. The artwork on it looks like Dr. Evil, I think it was, from Austin Powers. It's got a bald guy with an eye patch stroking a cat.
You can't blame me for that one.
No, it's a very, very interesting bottling that I quite enjoy. I need something to wet my lips. If we're talking about whiskey for this long, I can't not. But I'm intrigued to know, like, when I worked in Edinburgh, Famous Grouse was obviously a very, very, very popular blend in the pub. However, there was 2 other blends that would rival it for sales in our pub, and I'm wondering if you know whether your grain ended up in either of those, because a lot of the blends much to my dismay, don't advertise what grain whiskey goes into it. They'll often tell you what malts sort of go into it, or some of the components. But apart from some of the guys like Compass Box or Turntable, for example, who are very proud of the grain components, a lot of people hide it, and I think that's a real shame. So I'd love to know, like, some of my favorites, like Black Bottle is one of the ones that we sold a lot of.
Black Bottle. Ooh.
Yeah.
I would need to check that. I would need to check
Fair
that.
enough.
I'm not sure. I'm not 100% sure. What was the other one you were thinking about?
Scottish Leader was the other one we sold at the pub. It was a South African blend, I think. Owned blend, rather.
Well, I think both of them now are under another owner as such. But yeah, you're right. I mean, we are involved with several blends as such, and I mean, you talk about Famous Grouse, but we're also in Johnny Walker.
Yeah, of course.
We're also in J&B Rare. So there's a few others out there. We do, and I don't know the quantities, but we do sell some of our grain to Chivas.
Okay.
So there's usually normally kind of swaps that are done in that sense as well.
Do you know if you sell much to Adelphi?
I couldn't honestly say. I'd be.
You've got thousands of customers, yeah.
Yeah, we just know that when people will probably ask. I mean, we recently done. One of our customers done a recent release, and I didn't know this with Centauri was Ardray. Was a blend that actually had some North British in it as well.
Interesting.
So again, you when customers take casks. They might be for just maybe standard, or they might just be for grain. But like you say, nobody really specifies how much, because all the recipes are obviously secret. But certainly there might be a little touch of it in that sense. So nobody really shares how much. I suppose it's going into any kind of recipe that's a winner. You don't want to exactly share the quantities of what goes where, but certainly there's maybe something in others. I know we're in a couple of Ian McLeod blends as well.
Oh, nice.
So we do have some certain blends that we probably aren't aware that we're part of, but certainly know that we know the customers that obviously get them in that sense as well. So
Yeah, fair. I mean,
we
in an ideal world, it would be perfect if every bottle that had North British had a little stamp on the back that says contains North British. That'd be.
Yeah, I mean, myself and my MD, we were in the Port Elise distillery, and that's a relatively new distillery by Ian and Paddy, and they're actually serving North British as a table whiskey, which we thought was a really nice idea.
Yeah.
We were worried about the brand recognition piece, but we said, no, that's cool. It's all good. It's again helpful for us in terms of getting our name out there. And they say it's a really, really good whiskey, and people do compliment themselves on that as well. So I think it's if people want to use it, it's great. We're looking to try and establish our brand name better going forward, and these little things obviously do help, so we're not too precious about that at the moment.
No, fair. But I do feel like that's the direction that whiskey has been going in for the last few years, and I think, in my personal opinion, that's the reason that I'm relatively still optimistic about the future of Scotch whiskey in the market right now. I mean, obviously there's always been dips and valleys, and there's been whiskey locks, and but I feel like the customers that whiskey has now, they're not invested in it as a drink, they're invested in it as a hobby. And I think that's a big difference. And it's the people who are looking into it, spending time researching, reading the backs of the labels, I think they're not going to go anywhere.
People really love the stories. They really love the backgrounds. They really love the, how did you come to make this whiskey? I mean, I've attended a couple of whiskey festivals, etc., and you could just see the interest, and people just aren't going on to want to really know about the drink, be knowledgeable about the drink, and how they drink it, etc. And I think that's testament to the fact there's a lot of variety out there. There's a lot of great stories, a lot of new brands coming on. People try to do a bit of change in terms of what's happening, and we've got to change like that in the future as well. And you're right. I mean, we are going through a bit of a lull at the moment, but certainly it's not going to go away. It will come back again.
Oh yeah, absolutely. And if when it comes back again, people have a better understanding of grain whiskey, that would be an ideal future in my mind, because it's something that I've been trying to push here I mean, it always felt like single grain was the underdog, and I'd like to see it not be the case, you know.
Yeah. Well,
And to that,
I am told that we are the only grain distiller that uses maize. Everybody else
ah,
uses wheat, so we're quite unique in that sense.
hmm
I do believe that maybe others are maybe experimenting with that, maybe looking at maize as a kind of alternative to wheat, because I know wheat tends to be a bit more coarser and less softer than what maize is.
hmm
That's my opinion. Others might have another. But certainly, you're right. In terms of single grain, it probably does get a bit of a bad press because of all the malt side of things and the purity and all this kind of stuff. But certainly, everybody kind of comments on how North British and how it tastes. So it's a real good feeling when you hear that.
Yeah. And North British, I mean, I'm a fan of grains in general, but North British has always been one of my favorites, not just because I live down the road, but flavor wise, it always felt a little bit sort of thicker almost. It felt a little
Mm.
bit more concentrated. And it always reminds me of Werther's Originals, which is not a bad thing. um, and yeah, like I said, we've been championing grain whiskey. And so in our first batch of signatories, because they've just come to market here, we had this 14-year-old. And
Mm.
we actually used this as a teaser. So before we did our big tasting where we had, a room full of 50 people come and try all these whiskeys together, this was actually just available for people to come and sample in a cupboard in our store. So if people swung by, we'd be like, hey, you want to try something interesting? And we sold out in record time of this whiskey. I mean,
Wow.
partially like the value for a 14-year-old was great. So the flavor profile was very, very much appreciated. And we also poured it at the Highland Games Festival, which is the perfect way to do it. The Highland Games here in Victoria is a funny thing. I've never come across anything quite so Scottish in Scotland. It's almost like if you take the Scottish people out of Scotland, they somehow become more Scottish. It's weird.
People are
But
missing
it's a
home.
perfect... Yeah, exactly. It's like how in Quebec the version of French they speak in Quebec is actually more akin to traditional Old French than the French they speak in France now, right? They hang on to their roots a little tighter because they're a little further away from it. But the
Yeah.
Highland Games here in Victoria is funny because it's actually been going for longer than Canada's been a country. It's been going for almost 160 years.
Wow. Wow. That's
So it's
impressive. That is
right.
impressive.
It's a wild thing. So we launched this at the Highland Games. People absolutely loved it, and then got a chance to come and buy it and try it in store. We went through 4 or 5 cases or so pretty quickly. But the one thing that people said was, "It's lovely. I love the flavor. I love the profile. I just wish it was a little bit stronger and just a little bit older." So I mean, I'm taking a sip right now to remind myself of the mind frame that everyone was in back then, but.
Mm.
I still think that's lovely at 46, to be honest. 46 is a perfectly fine strength for whiskey. I don't know. There's a lot of emphasis on cask strength these days, and there is something to be said for choosing your own ABV, I guess. But 46 is a nice sipping whiskey, especially before 10 a.m. So that's so that's exactly what we did for them. We got in touch with Signatory, and we found out that they actually had a sister cask to all of the casks that went into this original 14-year-old. So they found us a sister cask, and they bottled it at almost 2 years older. It's actually a week away from turning 16, which really speaks to the Signatory style. It's ready, it can be bottled, we don't care about the number on it.
Yeah.
And we bottled it at cask strength. And this is a landmark thing for our whiskey club, because whilst we've done about 30 or so single casks in my time here at the Strath, this is our first ever Scotch single grain. It's and partially because of it takes that long to educate the market sometimes as to what the hell this is, but partially as well because there's just not that much available to us to be done for us as a special bottling. So we're really, really excited about this one. So it was bottled on the 17th of June 2025, distilled on the 23rd of June 2009. So what can you tell us about what was going on at North British back in 2009? Any?
Well, I do know it was a sunny day. Yeah, and it was probably it was part of a parcel of 150 casks that was sent over to well, it was cast up in that particular time. And yeah, it was literally moved out of the facility at Addiewell in 2023. So that's when I was asked the request to go up to Edinburgh and the team up there. And obviously they done their magic with it in that sense. But yeah, 2009. Oh, crikey, who would have been? Probably Tommy Lee would have been the production director then, and David Ray would have been the managing director. Kind of legends in North British history terms.
Nice.
But certainly those guys would have taken good care of them. Those 150 casks at that particular time, yeah.
Beautiful. So it would have spent most of its time maturing in Edinburgh.
In Addiewell, which is just
In
outside
Adwell.
Edinburgh. Yeah, yeah,
Ah, I'm not
which
familiar with Adwell.
yeah, that's where the Muir Hall complex is.
Oh, lovely.
Yeah, so
And what?
that was built in 1963.
Mhm.
And what you found through the 80s and 90s, a lot of the warehousing and cooperages that were here in Edinburgh were kind of, I suppose, upgraded to flats. What else?
Mm. Yeah.
So a lot of that kind of moved out, and the complex at Addiewell is now purpose built in that sense for maturation purposes. So the casks are diluted there when they come in from Edinburgh, cast up in the casks and then stored in the relevant warehouses for the length of time clients want. So it's only 17 miles down the road, but in the countryside, a lot nicer, a lot fresher, bit more open to bit more open to the elements though.
So you're not going to get so many hints of diesel in the.
No, 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 not at all, not at all. So certainly from that point of view, but yeah, that was one of the kind of key things that way back in the day. There was a lot of kind of argument. We talked about the smell earlier on about Edinburgh.
Mm,
Some people love it, some people hate it. There's always that kind of getting that smell about Edinburgh, but also about the buildings and the architecture.
yeah.
And I read an article earlier on today about the Westfield warehouse or the Wheatfield warehouse that was actually, you know, the one of the guys in the whisky industry tried to protect it and say this was almost as nice as the Edinburgh Castle. And when you looked at the picture, they said probably not, but they were obviously quite keen to keep the warehouse as a kind of architectural masterpiece. It never did.
Nice.
It eventually got demolished in that sense. But yeah, look, again, Edinburgh itself, it's quite a lucrative place to stay and things like, buying houses and all that kind of stuff that comes into play. We're not intending moving anywhere, and we are probably not likely to move anywhere because if we were to
Yeah, that'd be quite the process.
would indeed, if we were going to repurpose, then you're talking in the region about £300 million in that sense.
Yeah.
Just ridiculous money to build a new distillery of this size and of this magnitude out in the outskirts again. And then who's to say, because we're in Wheatfield Road, what actually
Mm.
used to be a road full of wheat in effect. We were surrounded by fields. So now we're about a mile and a half inside the Edinburgh boundary next to Tynecastle Park and
I
Murrayfield
do love all
Stadium.
those
So
place names that harken back to a simpler time in Edinburgh that you're trying to I can't quite imagine what what would this be like as a wheat field. It's like I don't think I've ever seen a blade of grass in the grass market, you know?
oh, you need to go back to the 20s and 30s where you actually see some of the actual, fields that were about here, But
Yeah.
now we've got a chemical plant next door. We've got Hart Midlothian next to us. You've got, lots and lots of kind of tenement buildings and people living. You've got the Western Approach Road just over the other side there as well.
Yeah.
So we're pretty much enclosed. So we need to be probably imaginative about how we expand the business, what do we want to do, and doing things like upgrades, etc. Can be quite
Mhm.
tricky, but we're always upgrading and looking at what we can do from an environmental sustainability point of view as well.
Nice. So speaking back on maturation, I assume of something of your size, you're not doing dunnage warehouses. You're palletized, I assume.
Well, there's three types. Sorry.
Okay.
You've obviously got the dunnage, which is the traditional, the romantic side of malt, as they say.
Yeah.
You walk into any malt warehouse, you'll see the dunnage. That's always there. We did only recently, a couple of years ago, have the last of the dunnage removed from. We did have small stock
Oh,
holding here in Edinburgh, so we literally just moved that out. We do have a kind of modernised rack and tier system,
cool.
about 30% of our site in that sense. So, depending on the customer, depending on what they want, they'll either go in the rack and tier, or as you said, to the palletized side of things, which is
Mm.
less space hungry and a lot easier to actually manage and control in terms of stock. But we still have a rack and tier element of that within the maturation site.
Nice. So here's a hot tip for you. Something I'd never even considered. So I've been working with a Chinese distillery of all things recently, and they do something I've never seen before, which just like it kind of just made sense. They make their casks wider at the bottom than at the top, so that when they're on a pallet, they don't wobble.
Oh, listen, the amount of innovation that's coming through about certain things that you do and don't. We'll probably just stick to the traditional side, Adam. That's probably something.
Yeah, it'd be hard to get the Coopers to change the way now, wouldn't it?
Oh, listen, some of them have about 30, 40 years experience. No, I don't think they'd be happy about that.
No, they wouldn't. What do you mean I've got to have two different piles for two different size of heads? Screw that.
I can hear those arguments right now.
Oh, brilliant. So we mentioned earlier how it would be an absolutely monumental effort to actually move the distillery at this point. How much of an effort would that be? How many stills do you guys have right now?
Well, we now have 4 active stills. We would normally keep one off for maintenance at all times. So literally we kind of rotate those stills through a period of time. But there's 4 coffee copper stills that we kind of use. We recently just replaced one that had been pretty in a bad state of repair. So we've now got those fully up and running. We've been gradually investing a bit more in the facility as well. And like I said, we've done the upgrade of the stills. We've looked at other ways we can try and make it more efficient, but also more cleaner, less noisy in that sense as well. And that's worked really well. So that we've got the 4 stills up and running, like I said, but we tend to be between 2 and 3 and do kind of proactive maintenance on them on a regular basis, pretty much every week.
Nice. So in the malt world, there's especially internationally over here in Canada, it's a real prestigious thing to have a still from Forsyths. Is there an equivalent manufacturer for coffee stills? Is there a Forsyths of the coffee world? Like, who makes the stills for you guys?
Well, there is, but I would be telling a lie if I knew who actually made them.
Fair.
Apologies for that. I kind of presuming it's a similar kind of individual or company that was well known within Scotland. I would be telling a
Yeah.
lie who it would be if I did mention the company I think it is. I just wouldn't
fair
like to
play.
do a disservice to somebody
No.
else.
It's not that you don't know, it's an industry secret.
Well, that's what I'll say. It's a secret.
Perfect. And on the other side of things, you were mentioning you're maize-based, corn-based. Where do you actually get the corn from? Because I imagine it's not British corn. I can't remember seeing corn growing there.
It's various. I mean, again, initially we had several sources, but a big chunk of that did initially come from Ukraine a way back when the war started and all that kind of stuff. So I had to replan where our roots came from. So we do have 3 or 4 countries now that supply that and support that. And I think it's something that we keep a close eye on and where it does come from. And we work very closely with our suppliers in terms of the sustainability route and where that comes from as well. So so various countries, France, Poland, Ukraine, to name but a few. But certainly we try and work with our suppliers to try and get the best kind of options surrounding maize.
So I polled our members if there's any questions that they would like me to ask you, and there was one question that several people was like, yeah, I want to know if they've thought about that. So I want to keep the politics to a minimum, but due to what's going on in the world right now, have you guys considered throwing a bunch of corn whiskey into a virgin oak cask and making a Scottish bourbon?
Oh, no. I can't be drawing any political questions there, Adam. Oh, listen, I mean, that's one thing we always have to keep an eye on anyway, in the general sense is what is happening and how do we kind of make sure we're doing the right kind of thing, I suppose. I mean, I think it's we always try and stay out of politics as best we can. It's just too much of a headache. I think others do a good job of messing up, shall we say?
No, fair play. And but I have to admit, part of the reason I was so confident in bringing a single grain is because there are a lot of bourbon drinkers in BC right now who are looking for an alternative. And it's not just that they're like they don't want to buy bourbon here. It's that they literally can't. Our government put a ban on importing it. So having an alternative corn-based whiskey that is objectively very, very different, but it hits a lot of the things. It doesn't go in the direction that puts them off for other things. Like a lot of bourbon drinkers, they don't like Canadian rye because it's sometimes too soft or sometimes too spicy, depending on whether it's 100% rye or basically just corn whiskey with some rye added to it. And they tend to be put off by the idea of a single malt because for some reason, a lot of bourbon drinkers think that all single malts taste like Lafroig, which is super weird. So I thought to myself, like, this could be an interesting thing to try and, patch that gap a little bit. But it is, and I just want to talk about like how different of a style it is, and how much better I think it is than bourbon personally. I enjoy a bourbon, but I find that bourbons all tend to be very samey, and a lot of that comes from the fact that they do put it in that brand new American oak virgin cask every single time, and I feel like you don't get as much of the distillate characteristic. And when you're looking at a grain whiskey, I know a lot of people say that grain's only good after X many years, and I think, again, that's a lie. I've had 8-year-old grains that are fantastic. But there is something to be said for that maturation. It's not all additive maturation. You're not just leaching the flavors out of the wood to add to the grain. It's subtractive maturation as well, right? It's the components of the alcohol that you don't necessarily want in there, changing over time, morphing into something more beautiful. And I feel like at 16 years old especially, that's where North British really seems to sort of shine in that balance of additive and subtractive. You can certainly have a younger whiskey and it can still be really good, but the balance on a whiskey from North British at around this age is fantastic. And I do really enjoy something like this one, which we're actually going to be releasing on Thursday. So I should mention, this single cask launches this Friday. I'm really excited about that. It's 135.57. If you can catch this video before we launch it, you can get a 15% pre-sale. It's 115.23, and that's Canadian dollars, not British pounds, so it's a bargain. Don't worry.
Do you do
this
shipping
guy,
by any chance?
We sure do, across Canada only, though. Sorry. This guy, this 33-year-old, we're actually releasing another case of this at a tasting on Thursday. Which is going to be super exciting. And it's a very, very different beast because, yes, it's had that subtractive maturation, but this is 33 years in an Oloroso sherry cask. So it's got a whole lot more cask influence than it does the spirit influence. But again, North British is really, really particularly good at that because it's designed from the get-go to take on flavors from malt for the blending process. So it works really, really well with a lot of flavors added to it. So it's a very Morpheus multi-purpose. It feels like the Swiss Army knife of whiskies to me.
I'm liking the colour of what I see there as well. It's a very deep colour.
Oh, yeah. 33 years in a refill as well. So, you're not just getting an absolute sherry bomb, but it's got enough going for it. Oh, it's a gorgeous whiskey. If you can track some of this down, the North British 33 from 1991, it's 53.2 as well, which is a beautiful strength for a natural cask strength. And, it's all 100% concentration flavor, but not as much alcohol burn at 53. Oh, yeah. That's a gorgeous dram. It really is. And actually, that's one of the other questions that was asked by our membership that you probably can actually answer, or have a vague estimate. Is what kind of strength do you get to when you distill at North British? What's your still strength and what's bottling strength, casking strength for you guys?
Yeah, in terms of still strength, it's 94.7 is what our ethanol comes off at, and literally we'll store it here, and then we'll send it in a tanker over to Muir Hall, and then it tends to be cast between 63-69% in terms of that, depending on, again, I suppose customer requests and that side, but it tends to be in that sense.
Okay, so you don't have a standard, you leave it up to the customer what the casking strength is.
Well, we tend to maybe suggest, but again, a lot of the people are just standard North British side of things. They just want to fill at that particular one, so we get kind of used to who wants 67, 69, that kind of thing. It really depends on where it kind of goes. So that tends to be the slight variation in some of the kind of casking up that we do. And, so you get a different cask, get a different variety in terms of fillings, etc. So that's what tends to happen. So, yeah.
Beautiful.
But certainly, in terms of the whiskey coming off here, always 94.7.
Nice. That's cool. So consistency in the distillation, but leave it open a little bit in terms of filling, and because it is an amazing difference that the filling strength can make as well. Like different esters, like come through, and different chemicals get leached out of the wood at different ABVs. One of my favorite things for that is I tend, especially with bourbon, I find that older whiskey. I don't like old bourbons. Like Pappy Van Winkle, to me, not a fan. It tastes like pencil shavings. It's got far too much like raw wood going on in there. But if I am going to have an older bourbon, there is one that I really enjoy. Like it's rare that I like bourbon over 10 years old, but 20-year-old Michters is beautiful because they put it in the cask at a lower ABV. They know that they're going to be putting it in for longer, so they mitigate it. So I'm guessing a lot of your customers have a different idea of how long it's going to be in that cask as well, right?
They do. I mean, one of the biggest sort of challenges you've always got is trying to establish what space you require in 3, 6, 9, 12 years time, because just don't know. Somebody might say, right, okay, I want to take a 3-year-old grain and store it in Muir Hall for the next 3 years. Fantastic. Then their market will change and say, you know what, I'm going to keep that for a further 3 years. So
Yeah.
we need to balance that with a lot of the kind of discussions so that we've always got space available for customers every year, because everybody builds differently, everybody has different thinking about their own stock. So it's a bit of a chess game in terms of all these customers. How do we make sure we've got enough space going forward? And
Yeah.
that's always the case when the market goes low. It means stock's not coming out, which means again, how do you keep that market turning over in terms of sales, making sure that you're getting stock out in order to put the new make and laying down more stock in the future. So it's quite a bit of a chess game that way.
Mm-hmm. No, fair. So there's one North British. Oh, I assume North British. I've always assumed, but never actually seen it confirmed anywhere. So maybe you can confirm or deny. But one of my white whale whiskies that I really wanted to try, but never got an opportunity, and it got discontinued, was the I always called it the white grouse. But I think it was a snow grouse. Was it?
There was a snow grouse. There was a naked grouse. I think. I mean, again, it's probably some special branding at the time. I think it depends on what Edrington wanted to do, wanted to sell at that particular time.
Mm-hmm.
I remember.
Because my understanding was that the snow grouse was just grain whiskey.
I would be telling a lie if I did say that or not. Normally, if you've got the grouse name, it would be a blend of sorts.
Yeah.
But I'm not 100% sure. I need to check on that, to be honest.
Yeah. Fair play.
Um, but yeah. Um, I wouldn't like to say in case I give some wrong information. But certainly,
It's
I'll
okay.
do my
We've got
homework on
people that
that
will
one.
fact check us in the comments. So I'm going to go out on a limb and I think I'm fairly sure it was a single grain. It might have been a blended grain, but I think it was just a grain whiskey. And it's one that I've been chasing down for a long time. I remember seeing it once in an airport, but I'd already
Mm.
got my full allocation of whiskey that I could take through customs. I was like, no.
I mean, again, it depends on what's kind of I suppose at the time they're looking to obviously maybe try and diversify, trying to get a new product on the marketplace, and if it works, it works. If it doesn't, then they'll probably just continue it very quickly in that
Yeah.
sense. But then that again, then it almost becomes like a cult favorite in that
Hmm.
sense. If somebody says, "Oh, I really want a bottle of that because I heard it was really good."
Yeah.
So yeah, sometimes it's a bit difficult for those marketing and salespeople to maybe get it right and all the time.
Fair. But yeah, I mean, it's the reason I brought it up is that if it was a single grain, it's the only time I can ever remember what could theoretically be considered an official bottling single grain
Mm,
from North British. And I think you were mentioning before we started that occasionally you guys do like special anniversary bottlings and things. Is that
yeah,
something that you're looking to continue, or maybe have a broader release of?
we tend to do. It has happened in the past, and some of the bottles you mentioned there.
Mm.
So for example, there's been 40-year-old, 50-year-old, 60-year-old. In terms of anniversaries as such, you know, what is what we'd like to do. I mean, I think a couple of years ago we done a 60-year-old bottling for charity. There was only something like 60 bottles, or maybe it was a 58-year-old cask
Oh wow.
or bottling as such. And that was all pure design just to, there was no profit coming from that. That was going direct toward charities as such. So we've always tried to look at it a wee bit different, but we certainly aren't a bottling company as such. We don't have the facilities here. We tend to
Yeah.
go into contracts with others, other contract bottlers, etc., to give us that support. But we're something we've not really dived into in a big basis because we tend to be part of the whiskey rather than part of the bottling. Because then you bring out all those different challenges in terms of bottling halls and caps and labels and designs and oh, that sounds a wee bit of shiver down my spine there.
Yeah,
It's,
fair.
so
Leave
that's
it to
what,
other people. It's all about collaboration. That's their part of
definitely, definitely. I mean,
it.
there's the secretary guys, they take the whiskey, they
Mm,
bottle it, that's what they do. They obviously look at that kind of side of things. That's, they've got a small setup there in that sense, so that's what they do.
yeah,
And fair play to them. I mean, I think that's what we do. We tend to look, if we ever do a bottling, we will then select a partner to do that with us. And again, it's done with, with the intention of being a very small, very quiet and release, if you want to call it. But I think the last one was a wee bit more. It was on LinkedIn. It was about the charities involved, etc. So
yeah.
yeah, that's what we've done. But we're not planning to do anything soon. But we'll always saying, well, maybe we do need to, if we're going to go try and get a brand out there, maybe we do something maybe in the next 12, 18 months or something. But it'd be very small in that sense. But
Yeah.
if we do it, I'll keep one for you so you can
Ah, brilliant.
always.
I'll be coming by at some point. Now, it's actually one of the things I was actually completely shocked to hear that our mutual friend Michael actually came and visited North British because I've always wanted to and I didn't realize you could.
No, we don't do the tours as such.
Hmm.
Michael was just in the passing, and obviously I was keen to meet him, and invite him in for a coffee, had a chat in the offices, give him a quick overview of what we did, etc. We didn't really tour the site as such because we
Hmm.
see it more as a kind of chemical plant as such and what happens
Yeah, of
there.
course.
But certainly if you're passing, again, we have a lot of people who tend to use the car park for the rugby.
Yeah,
If you
Murrayfield's right there.
if ever you want to pop in there for a coffee, you're more than welcome, Adam. More than welcome.
Oh, lovely. I'd love to. So I don't know if you saw my other video at the end. One of the other reasons that I decided to bring this North British in, we released it at the same time as this Craig Ellicky. And you might notice that the North British is a little bit lower than the Craig Ellicky. One of the things I did at the in that tasting was do my own blend, and that's part of the reason I brought these whiskies in is because I basically want to have our club members blend them together because that's one thing that I love to do personally. I love making my own blends out of single cask whiskies. And we're getting a peated Islay whiskey from Signatory as well for the Victoria Whiskey Festival in January. We're going to run a competition of our club members suggesting different ratios of the three whiskies, and I'm going to try them on a video here and crown a winner. But I've absolutely loved experimenting with this grain whiskey with some other single casks from my collection, from both Signatory, Scotch Malt Whisky Society, Hunter Lang, Douglas Lang. I've been playing around with a whole bunch of things. And in an ideal world, what I would love to see for North British to get their name out there, in the spirit of collaboration that started the distillery, I would love to see a series of North British X another distillery, where it's literally just like a blend of two distilleries, North British and Craig Ellicky, and it's right there on the label. I think that would be the most amazing collaborative series. Just like pick a dozen distilleries from around the world and have a North British X distillery name here.
Well,
Series. I think that'd be so cool.
I can also say, Adam, we would be open to that as well because obviously I want to sell some grain whiskey. So if there's any of your
All right,
viewers,
I'll get in touch with the guys at
there,
Signatory, see what we can do.
just to see what again, we're happy to explore that and have a chat about that. No problem at all.
Yeah, I just think it's like I said at near the beginning of this video. I think it's such a shame that blenders don't talk about the grain component. I often equate whiskey to like art or music and like an orchestra or a painting, and like a painting may be an easier thing because you can't add as much dimension and depth and color if you don't have the right like canvas, if you don't have the right base coat. If you don't have a good grain whiskey, you can't make a good blend. And I feel like that's a missing thing about the marketing of blends right now that I'd love to see more of.
Yeah, I think we tend to say that we're the backbone of some really good brands, You know, we know
Absolutely.
we've got a good product that's in there. We really make it stand up, and then the magic is done by the blenders and the master blenders at those facilities, etc. But we know our
Yeah.
grain whiskey is really good, and if you've got North British in there, then you're guaranteed a real good quality blended whiskey.
Yeah. It's a seal of quality, and it should be stamped on the back of every bottle.
I agree.
The hidden hero. Beautiful. Well, so I should mention this whiskey, the 33-year-old, I've been pulling all kinds of faces as I've been sipping it. If it doesn't sell out on Thursday, which frankly I'll be amazed if it doesn't, there might still be some available on the website, so it is worth checking back on Friday. It's coming out at $339.04, so that's a great price for a 33-year-old whiskey in Canadian dollars. That's magnificent, especially for a whiskey of this quality. So yeah, it's worth a try just in case we don't sell out on Thursday, checking the website, but it seems unlikely, to be honest. Yeah. Do you have any questions for me before we pack up, Gerry?
No, I mean, just obviously, you guys, how big's your marketplace over there? And if there is anybody who's actually bypassing, I'm not saying everybody pile in and have a say hello, but feel free to, pop by. We're right in the middle of Edinburgh. But how often have you actually carried this whole YouTube thing out? Is how long has it been going?
So funny that we started the YouTube thing simply because we couldn't meet in person during COVID. And if you look at my first video, it is the most sad setup. I'm in my old rental kitchen, which had a painted, what do you call it, cinder block wall. It just looked like I was in prison. The lighting was awful. I looked very sick. I didn't have COVID, but I kind of looked like I did. And it was a very somber time in March of 2020.
Oh, God, yeah.
But we couldn't meet in person for our whiskey club anymore. We just started taking things online, and it just kind of went from there. During the pandemic, I got to do interviews like this with people from all over the world and really enjoyed it. And I've just kind of continued, not as much as we used to, but I've just kind of continued. I'd like to think the quality's increased in 5 years, but the quality of guests has increased. I mean, look who we've got now.
Oh, thank you very much.
But yeah, I mean, the market here is really interesting. BC is a hard place to sell whiskey because of the amount of markup that the government puts on all the bottles. But we've got a very, very passionate customer base here, and we've also got the biggest and best whiskey festival in Canada. If you ever want to come out and to BC and mark it off as a company expense, come to the whiskey festival some year. Well, I'll make sure you're hooked up with some good classes, and you can even teach one yourself.
Oh, well, I don't know about my teaching skills, but certainly I can maybe just talk about North British in that sense.
Absolutely. I mean, maybe that's one of the things you could do a collaboration where we could put together a tasting for the festival in 1 year, where I speak to some of the I can speak to some of the importers of different people that bring North British in to all donate a bottle, and we'll have a North British tasting with different blends and different single cask bottlings. That'd be kind of fun.
That sounds like fun
It's
to
worth
me.
the trip.
Oh, listen, never say never, never say never.
Have you been out to Canada yourself?
I haven't, no, but my colleague, the site director at Muir Hall, Joe Thompson, he actually has family in Canada, so he's been a few times.
Oh, lovely.
I think he's more the Montreal way. It's probably where his family are based, etc. But yeah, no, I'll tell him about this. I'm sure he'll have a little laugh to himself. But there
And
we
if you're
go.
worried about Canada in January, Vancouver Island is a very weird, separate place of Canada. We're basically the same temperature as Yorkshire. Like, it feels exactly the
Wow.
same as growing up. Like, we get snow twice a year.
All right. Okay. That's handy to know. Very handy to know.
So we've got daffodils sometimes in January, so you'll be all right. You won't get the shock to the system that I got when I moved to Ontario. Before living in Ontario, I was actually in Australia.
Yeah.
The day I left Melbourne, it was like 38 degrees, and I got to Ontario and it was like minus 36. So it was like a close to 80-degree swing between places. And I learned one of my favorite Canadian words. When the air is so cold that when you breathe, you freeze the insides, sometimes you will get what's called a snotsicle.
Okay. I think I know what that is.
And on that note, it's been absolutely wonderful having you. Thank you for joining us here on the channel. I'm sure we'll meet again. Ladies and gentlemen, Gerry Friel from North British, and I will see you all on the next video, Slancher.
Cheers.